Hey everybody, it's your buddy Beard Grizzly. I consider myself a rather level-headed person, someone that can sit back and look at a situation and generally not let it affect me too much, or see it from multiple angles. I would say I'm still a passionate person in my beliefs, but I can still see things from both sides and almost always be okay with it after voicing my opinion. So long as we get somewhere in understanding each other, that's okay, good conversation. With Iron Banner around for the first time in Destiny 2, you'd really think my reaction would be that of joy and happiness, but it's anything but. Bungie has absolutely made me fume with some of the implications they've made, and frankly, really starts to point out just how weird and wacky the Crucible is at this stage of the game. I don't call myself a pro by any means, because I probably have about 100 hours into Destiny 2 at this point, with about 90 of them being in PvE, but I'd like to think I'd be able to shoot a gun and hit someone. Anyway, not the point, but it does show the gameplay in the background, because that's nothing special, trust me. Saladin being brought back to the tower should have been a highly momentous occasion. He brings with him his typical Iron Lord's flaming logo that was hanging around Vostok Observatory in Rise of Iron, and he's got plenty of cool-looking loot, albeit I don't have any need of it because I'm at power level 304 from barely raiding and not getting anything in trials. Again, not the point. The point is who isn't here and who isn't mentioned in the least, and who is seemingly omitted from any kind of talks that could have been had by Saladin at all. The bulk of my anger can be seen here on the main screen with Saladin. Lord Saladin, the last surviving Iron Lord, oversees the Iron Banner event, trial by combat where only the strongest survive. Last surviving, huh? Sure. Yeah, I can see that. Last survive. Oh, who am I kidding? If you've been around this channel long enough, then you know exactly who I'm talking about already. But where the devil is Aphrodite? I get that her position may very well be over in terms of her service to Saladin now that she's not needed to take over the Iron Banner with Siva under control, but still, where is she? Zero mention? No talks about her at all? I'm serious, I stood in front of Saladin for a good hour trying to hear if anything was said about her, but it's just typical drivel about keeping the city safe and being a good guardian. There's a good boy, here's some loot, there you go do it again. There is a new weapon in her name called the Guiding Sight, which reads, forged in honor of Aphrodite and all that inspires. Other Iron Lords that are talked about are Waylarin, Silumar, Radagast, and others, along with a ton of flavor text thanks to the gear, but frankly they're all dead and Aphrodite isn't, or at least we think so. Even then, said flavor text really doesn't amount to much, it's just more like, hey look, this gear was forged because Saladin is sad and he wants to remember his old Iron Lord buddies. Okay. And that's just the issue here. There's no lore tabs installed on the weapons or armor from Iron Banner, and all that we're left with is the same flavor text about being forged in honor of this person. It gives zero information further about anything Iron Lords, and after having an entire expansion dedicated to them with Rise of Iron, all this does is set up some rather large disappointment. Even if they took some older information and threw it into the weapons and armor, even if they just talked about some additional information on the original Siva battle, even if they just blabbered about some other past silly moments of the Iron Lords, then I'd be 100% okay with that. But instead, we get nothing. We get a shell of a story with no indication of what happens to Aphrodite and no indication about what happened otherwise in the battles of the Dark Ages. Never mind the fact that we're not talked about at all as a young wolf, but yet Shaxx will say it in Homecoming. Thanks, Saladin, I missed you too, buddy. Double confirm something. Talk about something from the past. Reintroduce some of the past grimoire that you've so nicely taken off your site, Bungie, but do something to make this stuff relevant. If you just rewrite some of the older stuff you have from another Iron Lord's perspective, similar to what it was with the events recorded in the dormant Siva clusters in Rise of Iron, then I'd be okay with that. And before you start saying it's a Crucible function, not a story function, let me just remind you how powerful the Saladin Grimoire card was. A hero to the city and a legend in his own right, Saladin Forge led the city's defense during the battle for the Twilight Gap. His protégés, Commander Zavala and Lord Shaxx, now lead the tower's vanguard and the Crucible, respectively. Saladin remains close to Zavala, though his relationship with Shaxx has been strained since the Twilight Gap. The Iron Banner seeks great champions to lead the fight against the darkness. It was born to honor the Iron Lords and their efforts in the earliest days of the city. What did this 2-paragraph little blurb just talk about? Well, Saladin Forge, yes, his last name, brought up Zavala and Shaxx to their respective standings. We also know that Saladin took part in a heavy way to lead us in one of the key victories that the city needed to hold itself up. It also says that Shaxx and Saladin don't get along very well anymore. But now the questions start to rise. What was Twilight Gap? Why was it worth mentioning of all things over some of the other battles that this old Iron Lord may have taken part in? How did Zavala and Shaxx meet? What makes Shaxx and Saladin so distant? Because, you know, that's never been in any way debated in this community before at all. Suddenly, you have a slew of questions that you just ache to hear a conclusion to. You want to hear more about them, or at least I do. I do as someone that cares about the story that exists herein with Iron Banner, the Iron Lords, and the early days of the city. Bungie, I'm largely disappointed in the showing you have with Iron Banner, and it doesn't make me very interested in playing the game mode at all. As someone that loved Iron Banner in the past, but was able to learn more from the Grimoire, flavor text, and other items that dropped throughout, I'm left feeling wanting to see more from the gear that you give us. You allow for lore tabs on trials and raid gear. You allow for it on the class items of each of the main vendors. You allow for it on the exotics and paired legendaries. But not here. Not the Iron Banner. Not one of the flaunted monthly rituals that you hold so dear to your heart every single month. And don't get me started on the faction rallies, because that's not much better. Your removal of the Grimoire was a supposed push to get it into the game with different tabs and items. This is far from what I would have hoped for. This is far from the information I would expect of limited time events. The scannables in the world? Yeah, I would hope more of them, but you allow for inference to be dropped on what is surrounding them, and that's okay. This is the kind of thing that I was afraid of in the early days of saying the Grimoire's gone, and to see it be, for the better part, confirmed as being unable to scratch any kind of lore itch, well, it's disappointing to say the least. This goes much, much further than Iron Banner. The moment that Bungie pulled the Grimoire off their website was the moment they seemingly said they want to invalidate it entirely. Yet, how often do I find myself in recent videos still referencing it? How often do I find myself looking into older information? How often do I find tie-ins to the past and what we've already done? It isn't bad enough that new players will have absolutely zero idea what I'm talking about, where I'm getting most of this information from. Oh no, it's now that you absolutely 100% have to go back to a third-party site like Ishtar Collective or Destiny DB to even reference what a Grimoire card is ever again. This isn't to say Destiny 2 doesn't have lore. It has plenty. In fact, I would say it has more than what vanilla Destiny had in its first year, or close to it. With still having 2 possible lore-heavy expansions on the way, it makes me wonder what we'll end up seeing from them and beyond. What frustrates me most is that we're missing pieces of a story that I know I'm not alone in wanting to hear more about. A lore tab explaining where Aphrodite went, a small explanation about where she is now in-game, something. Instead, we get nothing. Again, just as I called out the Grimoire loss and characters going bye-bye before in previous videos, I just don't want to see that happen any further. There has to be a line we draw with this cop-out statement of shelving stories and Destiny was issue 0 in a comic book series. I say all of this for the sake of wanting to see Destiny thrive somewhere. Right now, in a community that has a lot of negativity around it, I don't like bringing up topics like these. I hope in the end my criticism is constructive, not completely focused to being one of anger. Yes, I'm frustrated. No, I'm not exactly in the best of mindsets right now. Yes, I still love Destiny 2. There is potential that Bungie can still add this stuff in later on, and I do hope they do so. At current, however, I haven't been too thrilled with the storylines that have been born of Destiny 2, as their depth, the thing I mainly pushed for in my previous videos, is nearly non-existent. Thank you guys for listening. I'd love to hear your thoughts below as well, since opinion pieces like these are ever meant to be discussions. If you're not sure what to say though, you can leave the phrase, Aphrodite when, because, well, Bungie, Aphrodite when. I can only ever be Beard Grizzly, and I'll see you next Spacetime Guardians. Take care.